But I used to like hang out with my friends, and like I would literally see them like my white friends like yelling at their mom, like "fuck you" and like whatever Becky, and like going off on their parents, and like really like snapping back. And I was like shocked the first few times,
Yeah, that
and I,
is one of the most terrifying things. To hear a white kid call their parent by their first name for the first time, you're like,
I was like,
what the hell?
does that mean? I was like, does that mean something? Does Becky mean mom or something?
I
I
know.
mean something else? Like I don't know. But I remember them going off, and I remember I got into an argument with my mom, and I like tried to sass her back like my white friends, and then she was like, "Oh hell no!" She's like,
No.
"You know, with your white friends too much." She's like, I might need to take you out of that school if you want to keep acting like
I
this.
was gonna say, we're gonna pull your ass out of the Palisades.
I was like, "Oh hell no!"
That's
And
so funny.
yeah, and it was like really weird. Like those kids, like they just had everything, and I it was as a person who grew up in Inglewood, who did had a mom who was a single parent who was struggling to make. My mom gave me everything I needed and
Hmm.
everything she gave it to me, but like everyone else, like those are things that my mom like I had to like ask for or get or
Yeah.
have to work hard to get those things, and whereas other people, it's like, oh, it's just it comes with us, like
Oh yeah, this is the iPhone that I got when I was 5, and it gets upgraded every year. Like, yeah, it's so strange being thrust into that world of like excess. Like, just when you think that like you're starting to get like what life is like, and you're ready to be a teenager and all this stuff, and then you meet truly rich kids, and they flip your life upside down.
I remember the first time that I like realized that I was like how like wealth wealth difference between
Mm-hmm.
school, like the people I went to school with, and like because also I was in magnet classes, so a lot of kids were getting butts out there, but and like people who look like myself, black and brown individuals getting butts out there. But
Mm-hmm.
I was in, like magnet AP classes when I first went out there in middle school, so there weren't many black people in my classes. So there was like one or two here and there are like people of color, and most of the majority of the kids were like white kids who all went to school with each other. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember really realizing that I did not fit in there and that I was like completely different and I was in a different world was when our teacher was like asked for a paper and everyone had to type it up, and I realized and I turned in my paper handwritten, and because
Mm.
family we didn't have a computer at the time, and they were like my teacher really like embarrassed me and was like they were like oh, it needs to be typed up. You don't have a computer at home, and literally said that to me in front of everyone. And
Which
I literally had to lie and was like, our computer broke, and like it wasn't able, like our computer's down, and I had to like make it up, and I just felt so horrible and realized like, and I had to go home and cry and tell my mother that
mm-hmm.
like you know I need a computer. My mom went and bought a computer and
And
got us a
it is
camera.
shocking sometimes how the teachers are like not with the program either. It's like they are not even thinking far enough to be like, oh hey, maybe this kid like absolutely needed to turn in their handwritten paper. Like, it's that way to just like add to that feeling of alienation.
I turned the motherfucker in. All right,
Yeah.
I wrote this shit. Like I did. Also, my mom Becky didn't write it. Okay, like goddamn.
And
Um,
you said I'm gay. My handwriting is good. I know you can read this.
I have great handwriting. I was the only child for like 8 years, and I just practiced my handwriting for a very long time. It was
Oh,
before
absolutely.
last week.
No, I did the
So
same thing. I had a single mom for a little while and was like, well, obviously, like the gay kid with a single mom, I'm like, I'm gonna be just like her, copying her handwriting for like hours at a time, writing like an actual fairy by the time I got into to grade school.
it's always good to like learn your parents' handwriting so you can sign your own.
Exactly. No, see, I got real good at that. That's how I graduated with a 3.8 and a 30% attendance rate. Cuz I came in and I turned in those little attendance slips every day, and the lady at the office said, "Thank you so much. I know exactly what this is for."
I know my mom's handwriting. I showed her recently when I went to go visit back home in LA. I was like, look, bam, and she's like, what the fuck? I was like, yeah,
She said
I
that's a felony.
tried this shit. Like, also, I do email so I can sign in and delete the your son was not was missing from school today.
Yes.
I learned
Oh, that's so funny. We had the slightly updated version of that where it's like there was a parent portal or whatever online, and I figured out I knew all my mom's passwords, of course, and went into the parent portal, and I just changed it to my phone number that they would call every day. So every day at 6 p.m. I would get a little automated phone call that's like, your son has not come into school today. And it worked out perfectly. And like literally, I think it was the last month of my senior year that she was like, have I not been getting these attendance calls?
oh my god.
I have to say it was pretty impressive. The one thing I was better at than anything in high school, on top of music, on top of writing, all of it, was not going to high school.
Honestly, high school was a fucking ridiculous. High school was just an excuse for me to go hang out with my friends.
Exactly. Did you have a record of skipping? Was that I figure since you're bussed out, like you were a little bit limited, but you had all the rich kids like cars to drive around in.
But no, not really. I mean, it didn't really stop me. So the one thing is, I'm black in a fucking white neighborhood, so I stick out more, especially if I try to ditch. But me and my friends had like our little spots that we would go to and like hang out with, or sometimes we go to their houses.
Of course.
But I started ditching after a while, like towards the end of my like in my junior, like sophomore, junior, like senior year. That's when I like the first like 2 years I was like being a goody two shoe and not really ditching much. But then towards my like junior year, I was just like, fuck this place, I hate it.
To expect full attendance of like from a 17 or 18-year-old, like they should know better at this point than to be asking the kids to be coming in every day. Like that, especially like I can't even imagine what like Zoom high school is like now, where it's like I couldn't even make it into my classes when the school was like 10 minutes away from my house every day. And then to be required to log on to a Zoom and to show your face, like it seems like far too much.
Oh, that is really so much. I'm like, I don't want to. Well, at least like, I guess no, yeah, you can't. Like, I was like, oh, you can just like disappear. Like, can I go to the bathroom? And you just like go off and disappear. But like,
My ass would have figured out a way to like with all of the video magic I've learned from digital drag, like I could have just made a lovely video of me like nodding along and then patched that in and just like kept it running on a loop throughout the whole class.
nodding every once in a while. No, I had a friend who does like she is like a young teacher, and she had a student who drew a picture of him and put it in front of like
that's funny.
Drew a picture of him and put it on the camera.
That is hilarious. We're gonna have a whole new generation of kids who are clever as hell as far as like just getting out of things, because this Zoom school is no joke.
I was thinking about it. I was just like, I had some great tricks and I got away with a lot of stuff. And every generation tries new things and works on it. And I'm gonna be on top of my shit when my kids come around. But like, they're gonna probably learn new things, and I'm gonna think I'm cool and hip, and I'm just gonna be like, fuck, they got me.
Well, when I think about the things that I did get away with, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure if I had a teenager that they would be pulling stuff off under my nose. Like that when I think about the things that my mom still was not aware that I was up to, I'm like, yeah, like teenagers are capable of anything.
Yes. And you know what? I would probably be a little bit proud of my child if they could get away with something and like really use some like creative thinking of how to cheat or I don't want them to do that. But the fact that they like used creative thinking, brainstormed, figured out something that worked, I'm like, you did take after your mother.
That is a skill that your school is not going to teach you.
Using your brain, and you're not just playing video games. You might be doing that to go play video games, but you use the brain no matter what.
Exactly. My kid better not be playing video games, but if he is able to skip school for weeks at a time, you know what? All power to him.
If you figure out how to trick me and trick the system, then you know what? Fine,
you're grounded, but you get a little high five, like pat on the back. To circle back around, I'm just talking about the Bay Area and San Francisco and stuff. I'm going to bring this up with Florida too. Many of the listeners may know about Turbo Pageant, which is yours and Florida's competition, somewhat based off of the structure of Crash Landing, but just like the most lovely goofy, campy, ridiculous drag competition I have ever seen, and I was able to be a part of it at the beginning of quarantine. And what I discovered through that experience was that, like, San Francisco's drag scene, or at least like the queens that I was able to interact with, like, is so kind and warm. Like there is a closeness in the community that I could feel like even from thousands of miles away. So I'd love if you were able to talk a little bit about like why like I love Denver and I love Denver drag, but it's like comparatively when I look at the way that people interact with each other and the way that shows are run, like in the Bay Area scene, it's just so welcoming. And I wonder like if you have any insight into like how it came to be that way. Like how is it just San Francisco's rich gay culture that makes everybody so nice?
I think I think a lot of about it is that a lot of queer people in San Francisco are either escaping somewhere else, or they have found like truth, like peace and sanctuary in the city. And I feel like when you are feeling like comfortable with yourself and like how things are going and your environment or your home setting, I think it makes you more comfortable, more accepting to others
Mm-hmm.
because you're like are in the same kind of boat. Um, I don't know. I was thinking about that earlier, and yeah, I guess like we do have a very like welcoming, like very friendly like drag scene, and
Mm-hmm.
like here because yeah, like I said, I feel like a lot of people are like most people aren't from San Francisco who live in San Francisco
Of
or somewhere.
course.
Everyone's a transplant here,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like a lot of people are like they come somewhere else and then they're finding a new place, a new home, and they're a little bit nicer about it. But yeah, San Francisco, it's a small city. I
Yeah.
mean, it's only 7 by 7 miles. Like,
Right. But like I always forget how like truly tiny of a geographical space everybody is shoved into.
yeah, it's 7 by 7 miles. But there's hills and like valleys and everything, so that's how it makes it like you can fit so many people because there's millions of people here, and everyone pays $1 million to live in a shoebox,
Of
and that's
course.
just. And I think also the fact that everyone's going through like the same struggles, like people are like, we got to be nice to each other. We're all living in a shoebox. We're all like trying to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
There definitely seems to like there's such a camaraderie with it. It seems like everybody is on the same team, and it's like, and I really like credit you and Florida with like passing that vibe off to the rest of us who like came from different states and all over the country to do Turbo Pageant. Like I was talking to Pastiche is also going to be one of my guests on here, and we were talking about like how remarkable it felt to be a part of it, and like and there were little like Zoom after parties after a couple of the rounds of Turbo, and like we were just like remembering so fondly like we're talking to you in Florida and Syzygy and like and Rock'em Sakura and all of these people who like were just more than happy to get to know random drag performers from all over the place. Has Turbo Pageant like in the past been a unifying force like that? I would love to talk a little bit about like how Turbo Pageant came to be.
so Turbo Pageant, Florida was living. So my counterpart and co-host for the show, Florida Man, was living in Florida at the time. Florida in Florida.
Of
She was in,
course.
and she was moving back to the Bay. Excuse me. She's moving back to the Bay Area, and like Florida, she's like already working a million miles. Like
Mm-hmm.
like when I get back, I want to do a party. I want to do this. I'm gonna do. And she was like already like I want to do 2 new parties when I get back. And we like she reached out to me. She was like, I want to work with you. She's one of my best friends, and like we work really well together.
Mm-hmm.
And what about if we did like a competition show like similar to Crash Landing? And I was about to go to Chicago too. Like I was gonna flying out to Chicago to do some gigs. Oh God, I miss flying to do gigs. Anyways,
Oh
I
yeah.
was, like I was going to go to Chicago to do some gigs, so I wanted to go check it out there and see how that all went. And we had talked about it. We were like, let's do Turbo Pageant. Like, or we're trying to think about brainstorming about names and things. And we worked it out and made it like kind of took loosely the Crash Landing format, but made it
Mm-hmm.
work for us to give more of us a choice and give the audience a choices. And we wanted to make it like very San Francisco and make it more fun and not make it like not like an elite thing where it's like, oh, we're only
Right.
two friends. Like honestly, what's really hard is when I actually have friends in the competition, and
And being
then